even if you can maintain the spirit and the essence and the tone and that, that perfect crystal idea of what you feel like the story should be, even if you can retain that, the story itself is not going to be the story that you started writing. And why is that? Well, because you don't have a story. You have an idea of a story. Something that kind of made me feel like an idiot for not realizing this 20 years ago. This might reframe for you what it is that you're actually doing when you're writing. Because writing is inherently So, I have filled all of these journals, and I have written a lot in my life, but what have I not done? Or a screenplay. Okay, so I've written for many years. I mean, this is not even it either. I mean, I have notes on my phone. I have an endless amount of ideas. I've read a lot of stuff. I know about all these things. I've spent the last 10 years obsessively studying stories, obsessively watching YouTube, obsessively reading books, because when I first discovered that there was a way to outline stories and that there was some sort of underlying fundamental architecture to narratives, that there must be a way to make perfect stories. It's kind of like Plato and his world of perfect form. Because we can conceive of a perfect triangle, there must be a perfect triangle in some dimension somewhere that we're referencing. When I think about stories, I think about it in the same way. Because I have this idea of a perfect story, what that has led me to do is try for years and years and years and years to create the perfect story. However, what that has given me is no stories. That's not entirely true. I have recently written and directed a short film, which is why my room looks like this, because the character is, like me, a crazy obsessed writer who obviously doesn't expect anybody to see the inside of his bedroom. So I think it's safe to say I'm a bit of an idiot, right? And maybe you're an idiot too. Maybe a little bit. I mean, you clicked on this video, you knew what the content was about, but maybe you're like me and you're trying to not be an idiot anymore. So I wanted to share with you an idea that I had when I was writing a screenplay recently. I've worked as a writer professionally for the last 7 or 8 years, primarily in commercials, marketing, copywriting, things like that. I have had an audience for my work for quite a while. However, it has not been for my narrative work, which is because for some reason, when I'm writing something for somebody else, I can complete it on time. If I'm writing something for me, there is no deadline, and I'm not going to set a deadline because I want it to be perfect. So I'm going to keep going and trying and trying and trying. What that has left me with is like all these story ideas, right? Where I have all these concepts and character things and plot points and the way that all these things layer together and interact with each other. But the number of stories that I have started versus the number of stories that I have completed are embarrassing. If you're here, maybe you have the same problem that I do, which is that I spend all of my time outlining, world building, and ultimately just trying to get the idea right inside my head. When I was writing this new short film, there was something happening behind the scenes that I had never before seen because I had never before allowed myself to just try to finish something. And when I decided I was just going to try to finish it, what I realized is that after spending all this time writing, conceptualizing, world building, that even though they are not perfect, and even though I may never finish a single one of these stories, what I discovered is that all of that work is not for nothing, because all that time that we've spent trying to make our stories good has actually been doing something a lot cooler, making us better at telling stories. If you're new here, I'm Chris, and my channel is not the kind of writing channel where I tell you all the wisdom that I have and everything that I've figured out and all the accomplishments I've made and how I've done it. My channel is to say, hey, look, these are the things that I'm struggling with. These are the things that I'm learning, because this is very much an ongoing part of my life. This is something that I'm learning and figuring out as I go. And I just want to be able to help myself turn these ideas into something that's not only useful for me, but also maybe helpful for you. If that's something you're interested in, give me a like and a subscribe, and we can hang out more. The topic of today's video is okay. So I've seen a lot of videos that have covered the topic of outlining and world building. I mean, when I say a lot, I mean I've seen basically everything that anybody's ever put on YouTube about this, and I'm not being hyperbolic, and it's a problem. The reason that we outline and the reason that we world build is because we want to make sure that we're telling good story. We want to make sure that we're getting it right. My girlfriend challenged me with something a few months ago that really stuck in my head and I have not been able to stop thinking about since. She wrote like 3 short films in the time that it took me to write one. This wasn't the one that I filmed, it was a different one, but I just said, yeah, I just want it to be good, you know? And she said, well, what is the use of having something be good if you don't even have anything at all? As you can see with my stack of books, I've tried for a really long time to make things good. What I have not done is try to make things. And so this part of the process is new for me. Better is the enemy of the good. Right? Yeah. So the reason this is because everything could always be better. It could always be better. However, we are constrained by time and space. And so you could spend 25 years writing one thing, but how much more are you actually going to learn if you write 25 stories over the course of 25 years? If you wrote 25 books, don't you think you'd actually be a lot better at writing that 26th book rather than just spending all your time outlining and world building until you have nothing but ideas? Because the thing is, world building and outlining, that is a part of the process which is different from actually writing. Whether it's prose or a screenplay, writing is a different muscle. And the problem is that we have a feeling that we need to have our entire story constructed before we ever put the pen on the page. For me, I think that once I get it to a certain place, then I'll be ready to tell the story. What happens is I just don't tell the story. With this in mind, there's a visual that I want to put in your head. Have you ever played a real-time strategy game? One of those games like StarCraft or Age of Empires or something like that. Basically, the idea is you are playing not as a character in the story, you're more like God, and you are looking down at the map, and the way that all these games start, typically, is that there will be a sea of darkness. And in the very middle of that sea of darkness, there will be a patch of light. And in that patch of light, there is your little base, and it's what you start with. And so basically, the further that you get away from your base, the world begins to recede into shadow until there's just nothing else that you can see. And the only way to expand that area of light is to take some of your little guys and tell them to go here. And you just click a spot on the world because you have absolutely no idea what is out there. Then your little guys will run out there and try to get to that waypoint that you've set for them. And what happens when they walk into the dark is that the shadows begin to recede. A new branch of light has spread out. I think stories work a lot like this. Sometimes you might just have that one central idea, that character thing or that theme or that plot point you think would be so cool to see in a scene. That's one little patch of light in this dark sea of what your story ultimately will turn out to be. And sometimes in some of these games, you can actually even see other points of light, right? Like you can see, oh, over here they have my enemy has a base, or over here there's some resources they've let me see. And so you might even have a few little patches of light spread across this story idea you're trying to uncover, right? And so just like in the real-time strategy game, the only way that you can actually see how this character arc connects to that plot point, connects to this theme, this story structure, and connect to that backstory, the only way that you can actually see how they connect is to wander into the dark. And this is a crazy idea, right? Because as somebody who likes to outline, the very last thing you want to do is do this and just start walking in a direction. But what happens is the further that you actually start writing the story, the quicker you realize, oh, you know what, I can't go that way because there's this thing here. So I thought that was going to connect seamlessly to this theme, but now that I'm headed in this direction, there's a mountain here, and I actually am going to have to take a complete detour to get to where I want to be. At the end of the day, the way that your story will turn out, even if you can maintain the spirit and the essence and the tone and that, you know, that perfect crystal idea of what you feel like the story should be, even if you can retain that, the story itself is not going to be the story that you started writing. And why is that? Well, because you don't have a story. You have an idea of a story. You have this concept of what it could be. If you don't actually ever start the writing part of writing, then you will literally never ever know what your story is, because you have to wander into the dark to find, to see what your story is. I mean, it's when you put it in this perspective of this real-time strategy thing, it's like the only way to know what the story is to push back the darkness by wandering blindly into it. So the revelation here, right? We have to wander into the dark. Okay. I had this little mental shift while I was writing this last project. I actually started to make progress because I started writing blindly. I realized is something that kind of made me feel like an idiot for not realizing this like 20 years ago. But I think that this might reframe for you what it is that you're actually doing when you're writing. Because writing is inherently improvisational. And so what do I mean by that exactly? Well, every time that I, as a writer, have sat down with a book or at my computer, I have had to do the thing which is called start to write, okay? And I don't know about you, but every time I've done this, the words are not on the page. The words that I'm gonna write, they're not there. And not only that, there's nobody I can ask what words should be there or what words will be there other than myself. I know this sounds like I'm an idiot, but it was the first time that it really clicked for me that every time you write, you are literally just channeling the thoughts that you are having in the moment about the thing that you're working on. And it comes from nowhere, right? It comes from here, but it doesn't come unless you start doing that, because that part of the process will never be done for you. And so even though you're the kind of writer who wants to make sure their story is good, even though you're the kind of writer that really cares, that is going to go the extra mile to make sure their story is not just okay, but that it's great, I think that you don't have to worry so much about perfection as you think you do. Because if you're the kind of person who thinks that way, do you think that when you have a draft of a chapter that you're going to let it suck, or that you're not going to be aware of what sucks about it? No. Because every time you read something else that sucks or watch a movie that sucks, you go, oh, I have a million ideas of how this could be better. And the same thing happens when you reflect on your own writing. And a lot of times, frankly, you realize that your writing actually was not as bad as you thought it was going to be, or as you thought it was when you wrote it. But it takes that distance and perspective to be able to see it for what it is, to be able to see it as something that is not an incomplete thought. Because when you come back and you look at something that you've drafted, suddenly it's a complete thought. It's something concrete that you can now work with. And so my challenge to you is to see if the same thing happens to you, if you realize the same thing that I did when I started doing this. Because I believe that even though we've spent all this time world building, that even though we've spent so many years, what I think this has done for us, and I would like for you to test me on this, I believe that all that time that we've spent world building and outlining and plotting, etc., etc., I believe that has not gone to waste. What I believe that all of that work has done is it's actually created a sense memory in our mind for what stories are made of. For example, I could probably ask you to imagine the doorknob of your home, right? So close your eyes. Just think about the doorknob of your house. You actually probably know it a lot better than you realize you do, because I guarantee you nobody's ever asked you what the doorknob of your house looks like. I also guarantee you that you don't have a photo of just the doorknob of your home on your iPhone. I also bet that you've never taken notes about the shape of your doorknob, or the color of your doorknob, or the texture of your doorknob, or the height of your doorknob, or what kind of key it uses. But you know these things. And why do you know it? Because it's something that you interact with and interface with every day. And so in your mind, you know all these answers about what your doorknob is like. And it's because your brain has built a sense memory for what your doorknob is. And in the same way, all the work that we've done, even though we're outliners and we are people who want to plot and get things right in advance, and we're not the type of people who just go, well, you know what, I want to just start writing and then see what my book is, because those are two different types of people, and those are both very respectable paths to follow. But if you're the kind of person who likes to outline and wants to figure your story out in advance, then you're probably the type of person who's spent all this time studying structure and world building and characters and all this stuff. And so if you are that kind of person, even though you haven't spent all that time actually writing things like the people who just draft to find out what their story is, what I think that this has done is I think this has actually created a sense memory of the elements of story. So all that world building, all that outlining, that hasn't gone to waste. Okay? And it hasn't gone to waste because now what you have is a sense memory of the elements of story. So the next time that you sit down to write, I challenge you to write instinctively with whatever you have right now, whatever stage your story is in, and see, like me, if you can actually see that you are world building instinctively. That you actually, because when you sit down to write, what is happening is your brain is giving you everything that you have ever experienced in your life. And it's giving you access to that as it sees fit. And there's nothing that you can do about that other than just to let it give you what it will give you, right? But our subconscious is actually pulling from this warehouse of information that we have about how character interactions should be, about what this should be and what that should be. So when you start writing, write blindly and see if you are actually able to world build instinctively. And it's not to say that you don't make notes anymore, and it's not to say that you don't outline anymore, but what I think that you'll find is that you actually have a much better idea about how to write stories than you realize, but it's just actually the part of the process that you're in now as a writer is to see what it feels like to make progress. And honestly, when I do this, it makes me feel like I'm a crazy idiot because I'm going, well, I don't know, this, maybe they would say this, I don't know, okay, maybe they would say this. And you feel like a stupid person. At least I do anyway. And so the question then becomes, well, if we have all this information in our head, and if we are the kind of people who world build so well, and if we are the kind of people who care about making our stories good, then why do we have a hard time writing? And the answer could only be one thing: because we have a negative experience when we write, because it feels bad, because it doesn't feel good when we're doing that. We're going, oh, this doesn't feel good, so something must be wrong. But I want to change that in your head because it's not true. It feels bad because it feels unfamiliar, okay? It feels bad to you because it's unfamiliar, because what you're doing, and be aware of this when you're writing. I'm standing here at the edge of the dark, looking into the shadows beyond the trees, and I might hear a little click. So it's literally putting you in that perspective of the way it would feel to be a primitive human on a tundra at night. You know what I mean? It's literally psychologically doing the same thing to you. You're in an unfamiliar place where there is a load of uncertainty. And so we have unfamiliarity and uncertainty. And what this does for us is it gives us a negative experience because it's a fear mechanism. It's a self-defense mechanism that makes us stop writing. And so what happens when we get to this negative place, it puts us back here. It puts us back trying to make it better. Because we go, something must be wrong. I don't know enough about this story. I don't know enough about these characters. I don't know enough about this world. I don't know where this scene is supposed to go. I don't know where the scene is supposed to end. So what happens is we start trying to make things better because we're having this unfamiliar, uncertain, oh, well, I ripped the page in a bad way. Because we're having this uncertain and unfamiliar experience. Not because we're not good at stories. It's not because we're not good, and it's not because we don't know what stories are made of. It's because this part of writing is unfamiliar. We don't do it, so we don't know what it feels like. And so that negativity, that fear, is this thing that's telling us to go back to zero. It's telling us to go back and start outlining and do more world building, because then the scene will make more sense to you when you come back to it. And what that will do is that will make you never write anything. You will never finish anything, because all you're going to end up doing is getting to the edge of the forest and going, hey guys, you know what? I don't know, it looks pretty spooky out there. Let's head home for a while, and maybe tomorrow, once we get a game plan and action, maybe then we'll be able to know, we can intuit the lay of the land, and then we'll know which direction to go so we can find the food or the whatever. You know what I mean? It's like you will never ever do it because you're stuck in this loop of getting to the negative feeling of uncertainty and unfamiliarity, which is what happens when you're at the edge of the forest, writing your way into the unknown. And so what do? You go back and you start outlining and world building again because you want to make it better. So when you get to the edge of the forest, when you're standing there and you've got all your characters there and they're all sitting there with you and you're looking out into the dark and you're going, all right guys, we gotta make something happen. We gotta get out there. That you don't start going, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing because I'm afraid. What you should realize is in that moment, when you're sitting there at the edge of the forest and you're about to start riding into the unknown, when you feel that moment happen, that emotional trigger of the negative thing happen, remember this. Remember that you have a sense memory for the elements of story. No matter how much of an outline you have, you're always going to get to the point where you're improvising. And so if you don't get used to the idea that you have a sense memory for world building and the elements of story, then when you feel that unfamiliarity and that uncertainty, you're going to have that negative experience and you're going to run back and you're going to start outlining again because you think that you need to make the story better and know it better before you can even worry about making it good. And so, in conclusion, this information is not going to change what happens the next time you sit down to write. It's not going to have the words written for you. You're not gonna sit down the next time you go and realize it's all there. But what I hope that this does is it changes your perspective just enough so that when you feel that negative emotion, that you can recognize that it's not that you're not good, and it's not that you don't know what you're doing. It's because this part cannot be done for you, and it can't be done until you do it. However, know that you've got a nice sword, and you've got a backpack that's full of food and supplies that are going to get you over to that next plot point, over to that next character introduction, over to that scene climax. You've got all these things inside of you and with you that as you go out there, just remember, you have a sense memory for these things. Let yourself know, we get it, we got it, we're good. Now is the time for you to learn the unfamiliar part. It's the time for you to learn the next step of writing, and that is writing. And so I would challenge you to remember that writing is always improvisational, and that you have a sense memory for the elements of story. And I dare you to go trust this and try this, and trust is the key word here, because the thing is people a lot of times say trust the process, but what I would say to you is don't trust the process. Trust yourself, because you have spent so much time outlining your stories. You have spent so much time world building, studying characters, studying their arcs, studying story structure. You've spent your time doing this. You have these things inside of you, but nobody is going to do the writing for you. It's an unavoidable stage of this, unless you're going to use ChatGPT, and that's up to you. I'm not judging. But anyway, just remember this. Writing is always going to be improvisational. And honestly, I might do a video about writing with AI as well, because I have some interesting ways that I've been able to use it to kind of help me get started on things as somebody who outlines. So if that is something you're interested in, I'd be happy to make a video about that. Actually, on that subject of how to start writing by using your notes and using your outlining and your world building, I have actually found a really great technique for that, which I have very creatively called writing between the lines, because the way it feels to me when I do it is it feels like I'm cheating, because it makes me start writing before I realize that I'm writing. And as anybody who has trouble getting things done knows, that is the greatest feeling in the world. To sit there and go, oh wow, I've been writing for an hour and I have actual prose, or I have dialogue and action and scenes, you know. If you're interested in that, please subscribe and hang out, because I'd be very happy to share with you more of this stuff and hear more of the things that you're interested in learning and the struggles that you have. Because obviously, you know, I have a plethora of my own problems, and I'm sure there are many problems that you guys have too. But yeah, if you found this helpful or interesting or useful, or if it's given you some different perspectives on what the process is and why you might feel some of those things that you feel along the way that keep you in an endless loop of outlining and world building, then please let me know. Let me know in the comments if this is useful. I would really love to hear back from you and see if this is information that you find helpful. As much as I love watching other people talk about the things on YouTube, I feel like there is a lot of stuff that I don't hear people talk about specifically, and a lot of that has to do with the overlap for me between neurology, philosophy, story theory, and basically physics. And so if you're interested in hearing about stories from that perspective and looking at, you know, what our goals are and why we might have problems getting it done, ultimately it's about trusting ourselves and realizing that nobody's going to be able to do this part for us. And so now I hope, because it has started working for me, and it really truly has started working for me, and I hope that this can be something that has happened for you, and that maybe you will experience this. So maybe you go try it and then come back and let me know in the comments if it worked for you. But please let me know, because I think that this slight shift in perspective has given me a better understanding of what is actually happening inside of me when I'm sitting there trying to write the next part of my story and I have this horrible existential dread. All right, and that's really all I have for you today. So if you found this to be helpful or useful, please leave me a like and subscribe. And next time you have that moment of existential dread well up in your belly, just remember, you actually have a sense memory for the shape of story, and nobody's going to do this part for you. So let the good exist and let better come later. And so thank you guys so much for watching to the end of this video. It means the world to me that you would listen to this, and I really truly hope that it helps you as this has helped me. If you're looking for more of this, hang out with me. I'm gonna be doing more of these. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you watching to the end of the video, and I will see you in the next one.